hitting that
No.
record button. Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Tomas the Boss Hernandez, keeping this podcast pure. And how do we keep this podcast pure? By keeping everyone off but me and Robert. Joining me tonight, what did I write down for this on Friday? Due to child labor laws, his company is no longer financially stable. It's Robert Wyatt.
Dude, if you knew how much of that company was built on ignoring child labor laws, you'd be surprised.
It's like they have that crumble cookie place up here,
Uh-huh.
you know. And my daughter, her first job for like 6 months was at Crumble Cookies, and
Yeah.
she's just like, you know, she was like a shift manager. She was like, oh, we have like a 15-year-old here, and they can only work so much, but they say like they got to like keep them on the shift, but only put down these records and like they literally like it was one of these places that was like they rented a place and like they had like a refrigerator in front of the fire extinguisher, like because like that's where we have room.
I mean,
Th-
yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's where we're gonna do it.
I mean,
So
let's be honest, you don't need a fire extinguisher unless there's a fire. And as long as there's not a fire, we don't have a problem. So
yeah,
let's not have a fire.
yeah, let's not duh.
This is really simple.
What's gonna catch in fire in a bakery? Come on,
Yeah.
bitches. Think straight. Think
Yeah.
straight for
Come
your
on,
once.
folks.
Um, so anyway, so she goes through this and she's doing this crumble cookie thing, and there's always these 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds that aren't getting breaks or whatever like that, and she never got breaks and all that jazz. So then, she leaves, she goes to another job, and like 3 months after we leave, there's a huge class action lawsuit, not class action lawsuit. There's a thing from the government where they go and they like come after like Crumble Cookies for like $70,000 for breaking child labor laws and fines and penalties and stuff like that. And it was just like, huh, all right, that's the
The
way it
funny thing
goes.
is, yeah, but the funny thing about that is, I mean, if Crumble goes through and actually does the numbers on it, they probably made more money just by doing, I mean, having the kids work than the fine was even going to impose. So it's just
Oh
like a
yeah,
cost of doing business. They don't give a shit.
yeah. They'll like as it hurts, but like we just won't get caught again.
Yeah,
Duh,
exactly. Yeah.
duh.
How hard is this? I mean, for personally, I actually have no problem with young kids working if they, I mean, if they want to. Obviously, this isn't like the
I
1900s
I
with
I
like
feel
sweatshops and stuff like that.
I feel proud. Like if I see like a 13-year-old on a roof with a nail gun putting down tiles, like I feel like that kid's going somewhere.
I agree. I mean, and I mean, a lot of us who grew up in the construction industry, that was actually life. I mean, as soon as you're old enough to swing a hammer, you were going out with dad and helping dad, running parts or doing this, that, or the other. And so I have a little bit more of a like what do you call it, like a laissez-faire attitude, I guess you'd say. I think
Yeah.
that's the right word because that's just what I grew up with. I started working at 13.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my son is 13 and I look at him and I'm like, I can't believe that they actually let me start when I was that age.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. Like I started working when I was 16 and I've been like working ever since or whatever, but like and
Yeah.
then I kind of see like and I was like a homeowner at 23 and then like my
Hmm.
daughter's turning 23 and I'm like, "Oh man, this is like this generation's kind of getting screwed over." But the funny thing is too is like when you kind of have these moments, I was taking Michael out on night drives last night cuz he's got his learner's permit, and he only almost once turned into the back of a parked trailer on the right hand side of the road, which was the
Attaboy.
only problem he did. Is like he's making the right turns, he's just not looking down the street while he did it, and it was
Yeah, but
just
you're
like,
you're you're doing such a good job at least taking him out. I know so many parents who are just like they just sign the thing and move on. I mean, you're at least taking him out. And fortunately, he at least has a professional, I mean, because you are a professional driver,
yeah, like
teaching him the real world.
I'm hoping I can get him to drive double 45s, so I can get a couple hours of
Yeah.
sleep. Here you go, buddy.
Ideally at 16.
It's only scary when you look in the rear view mirrors, baby. Keep going, sir. Um, but no, like sitting there going and like seeing like kids grow up and like doing that stuff, you're like, oh man. The problem is he's driving Gil, and Gil's like the Starship Enterprise, and so like everything's lit up. He's got all these sensors and everything tell him what to do, and he's got to go into that old CRV when he's done, and so he's just gonna be like, oh man,
Is that the weirdest thing? I mean, 'cause I mean, you had a very old vehicle when you finally got your new car, and
yeah,
I was the same thing. And I went from like just very minimal instrumentation on the vehicle to like it's a freaking computer screen, and it took me, gosh, probably 6 months to really stop letting all the buttons and the things distract me. I
oh,
had a hard time with it for some
once a
reason.
week I find out something new that I can do.
Oh wow.
Once a week, I still find out some system or something in the thing that I could do. I didn't even know I had launch control until I went out with my friend and maybe went faster than what is allowed. It's very
Right.
stable in my mind. It's like putting a brace on a handgun, a stock on a handgun. You can vividly imagine it
That's the thing. Like
in
the Ranger,
clarity.
I have right. I've become so accustomed to driving. My average speed on the freeway is 85, and that's just what I drive.
Yeah,
And that the Ranger drives it. It drives it just fine. And I've gotten to the point where I slow down to like 70, and I'm like yelling at people, "Would you hurry up, you slow bastards?"
yep.
But the very first vehicle
Kick
I
that
ever
mule in
had,
the ass is what I like to say when I get behind someone's low. Kick that mule in the ass.
right?
Let's
The
go.
very first vehicle I ever had, I mean, it topped out at 85. And I actually got it to 85 once. This was an 84 Bronco 2. And when you hit that number, that truck was shaking so badly you thought you were going to die.
Yep. The leaf spring suspension working its damnedest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Um,
it was terrible.
So anyway, we went out there. Jared's building a match, and Kevin couldn't join us today. Me and Robert, we went out there and we shot a USPSA Slipsa match, with now Slipsa being the third largest club in the United States of America. That's pretty nuts.
That's yeah. I mean, I you got to be proud about that. And
Yeah.
I mean, like in in a in one weekend, we'll have 130, 140 shooters on average.
Yep.
And that the funny thing about that is that's actually with a whole bunch of our guys off shooting PCC Open Nationals right now. So
Yep.
we do good.
Yeah.
And I know other clubs out there that are putting out big numbers. Keanu's club back in, was it Virginia? I mean, they just trounced everybody. What is it? Adelani, I think is what it is. They just put up amazingly good numbers, but I mean that's because of them, and they're fantastic. But it's awesome just to be able to effectively have what is arguably a section match every single, like twice a month.
Yep.
That's cool.
No, it's and like a lot of good and healthy and fantastic competition that's out there on the club. So it's been amazing. We went out there, we shot a little bit on the Patreon side. You can hear the reasons why I completely boned up a stage. But I had to have one of those moments where Robert's really, really nice to me, so I don't walk out, take a VP9, throw it over the berm, look at all the new shooters, and go F yourselves, you little bitches, and then walk out like, you don't know who I am. You don't know what I've done. Kind of
I've seen
moments.
things, y'all.
I I went out and we shot the first stage or whatever. And like the first stage, you got the first stage hiccups or whatever. You go through it like nothing catastrophic or anything. And Jared asked for a reshoot reason on the Patreon side,
Hmm.
and he goes for a reshoot. And I come back and it's basically my turn. And I ask Robert. I say, Robert, like, what's the plan? And Robert goes, shoot these, transition to the steel, shoot what you can see, shoot the steel, go back over here, shoot this other paper steel, and then go to the last thing and shoot the last four targets. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, in the middle of the steel array, one of the steel poppers, unbeknownst to me, there was a mini popper behind that piece of steel. And so I go through and I shoot it, and like the gun's bouncing everywhere, and so I start gripping harder and I shoot everything, and I go over to the next into the next array and I completely space out. I shoot a target that I've already shot in before, and left a perfectly open target that I could see, nice and clean with no bullet holes in it, and I
Oh,
finish it.
that's what it
And
was.
and everyone is giving me the every
Caca!
everyone's giving me the are you, and I'm like, I listen, I shot everything. Like I think I might have two mic'd that down there that I can see. I don't but I'm not going to make that up, whatever. And then they're like, well, what about the steel you have up? And there's a barrel covering that mini popper. So I look to the left and I look to the right and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So I'm like, literally, like, I couldn't go back if I got all the signals in the world because I am unaware of this thing's existence. And
Oh, because you didn't see that there was the popper and then the mini behind it.
yeah, the mini behind it, and then the barrel from the side from my position, I couldn't see it to go readdress it. And so then I go and I look, and then there's a mini popper. And then there's a target that I didn't shoot. And then the procedural comes in, and then the three mics come in. And I am sitting there looking at that stage and just going like, wow, that's that that hurts to get like 23% on a stage. And and so like go through the rest day, shoot the classifier. And the last half of the day, like I actually start picking up and I actually start
Hmm.
shooting well. And I reshot that stage. I reshot that stage and shot it like in 12 seconds with like two Charlies, and it was just a whole lot better. And I was like, oh man, I'm feeling a lot better about that. But anyways, so I go home. Someone asked me how your match was, and I go, well, it wasn't the best of times. It got better. I did help somebody, which was
Hmm.
nice. If I had gone home, I somebody would have had a bad match and then a bad next match. But anyway, so I put in I pull it there and I was like 18th, and I was just like Robert second and I'm 18th, and I'm just like, oh goodness gracious. So before the show, I pull up there and put the two Charlie and the 12:77 time on that stage, and I put it up there, and I am uh 95.5% to Robert's like 96.6 or whatever. Like I'm right around like a percent. I'm like a percent behind him, and I'm only 4% behind Jared shooting his Glock. And so then I was just like, okay, all right. Like
Well,
I
and
had,
that's where you are normally. I mean,
yeah,
like
it's
you and I are like very similar on any given Sunday, as they say. You and I, we'll trade that position,
yeah
and so
the
that's exactly where I expect you to be, is like just ahead or just right there with me.
but when you like I'm not able to practice as much as I used to be, and then like you get done
Yeah.
with work, and then you show up, and then like you have like a shit stage, and like you're not even like looking at anything because of like the horror of it all, like, and you just try to go out there and shoot your match, and then like you just sit there and think like, well, man, like I've fallen from grace so bad. And then you look at the math when it's done, and you can play the what if game on it with like a reshoot that didn't count, and go like, oh, okay, like this isn't too bad. But some upgrades to this freaking VP9 are coming. But this damn thing, if you can get over the magazine release, this thing has been nothing but a gosh damn trooper. It's a freaking laser beam. It runs like a top, and I don't have to worry about it going off in my holster and shooting my leg. So trigger's a little rough. Not rough. It's good. It's a good service trigger, but there's not a lot
Yeah,
of
but
upgrades you can do to
if
it.
you if you grip it tight, then it goes away, right? It's not an
It
issue.
it goes right, and you never notice it. Speaking of issues that pop up, so one of the shooters, what was his name again? Is it
Lance Peters.
Lance? So he's got a Beretta 92X with the Tony system plate on it, and I was talking to him, and like he's a newer shooter, so he has no experience of me shooting a Beretta 92 in production for years. And so he's going through, and like I show him a Beretta, I show him my Beretta, and then when Colby Page takes his gun and dry fires it a couple times, and now the double action doesn't work. And so
Lesson is, don't let a cop touch your gun.
he's planting bad juju. Um,
He's either planting evidence or he's breaking your crap.
so I sit there and I go, okay, um, let me see it, and I feel it, and I'm like, okay, it's like two things. I know it is. It's either your sear or your trigger bar, your hammer or your trigger bar. And so like we pop off the grips, and the guy who sold him the gun sold him with one of the Ernest Langdon trigger job in a
Oh,
bag
in a
kits.
bag thingies.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
sick.
Wilson Combat and Ernest Langdon came up with this trigger bar, and what this trigger bar does. Oh, I don't have a. Oh, what this trigger bar does. Here's a Beretta 92. Let me
This is
make
how
sure.
cool Tommy is for everybody who's not actually watching the YouTube version of this. Tommy just has all of his guns laying out on a bed.
Oh, sorry, knocked my headphones out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just
Okay,
fine.
I can hear you. All right, so like, yeah, here's my Beretta Brigadier. A Wilson Combat trigger bar. All it does is like it takes the double action. So when you pull the double action, instead of releasing it like right here,
Oh,
it
right. It
releases it
goes
like,
all the way.
yeah, it releases it right before the single action notch. And
Which,
so
so basically it goes, if I remember right, is does it takes it as far back as your single action would naturally be.
kind of, because you can't take it as far back because then you'll catch on the sear.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because the sear's already back.
Yeah.
And so all what happens is when the trigger bar makes its final rearward movement, it pushes the sear out of the way so that the double action can make the full travel and fall.
You know what you need? An extended firing pin. That makes everything better. Ask Andy.
Yeah, it'll break sooner too in the Beretta. So anyway, so whoever had gotten this trigger bar in a bag kit was just like, well, what I need to do is I want to make this an even smoother break on the single action. And so they
Oh,
took that part of that trigger bar that interacts with the sear, but it also interacts with the hammer on the Beretta 92 in the double action mode, and they took this square, this rectangle tip, and they took the top of it and they made it like a triangle. And so what they did is they minimized the throw of the double action because they basically undid what the trigger bar is supposed to do. And so it had like a crisp release. You just mess with the sear when you do that, or the hammer notches.
right.
You don't do the trigger bar. And like Candy Terry always says, you always file on the cheapest part. And so you don't do it on the $160 trigger bar. So
Mhm.
anyway, we pull it out. I pull out the trigger bar and I look, and the top of that pyramid is just cracked off.
Oh,
And so like it's not going to work. And so it was nice because I was like, this is what you need, get this, this, this. And then he was just like, oh, I have one more stage to shoot. And then I was like, all right, so gave him the Brigadier frame, and he put that on his gun and was able to finish his match.
nice.
The lesson I was kind of trying to talk to him about is like there is ways to get Beretta 92 triggers to be phenomenal, like just magical, like things of butter and smooth and greatness. But like anything that's run to that edge, you run it trigger to the edge of performance, and eventually you're the one that falls off.
Yeah.
And so it's just like get this kit, like because a lot of the newer guys, they're not running a pistol with a backup gun. They are running just the pistol.
Mhm.
And when you have the one Shadow 2 or the one CZ or the one Glock, the one thing that you probably should not do is try to run it with the most
Prone
hardcore.
to break. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, prone to break setup for the most excellent performance in a trigger that you can possibly get. So I just told him, like, you're gonna get this trigger bar, put these springs in it, put this kit in it, and then like you're gonna have like a better trigger than most, but it's still not gonna be as good as a Langdon trigger job in a bag, but it's going to work for you know 30,000 rounds. It'll hold up for you.
You know what's funny is like so I have two Berettas, 292s. I have the 9A4 and then oh gosh, whatever it is, just the normal 92 LTT.
Yeah,
And I've done a ton of things to the 9A4, and I've done virtually nothing to the LTT. Now, obviously, Ernest went through and he did all his stuff to it. I get that, right? But at the same time, I've actually just gotten to a point. I'm like, the Beretta out of the box. I kind of feel the same way about the Shadow. I mean, both these guns out of the box, at least the one from Langdon, is pretty darn good, and I don't feel the overwhelming need to actually go and mess with it
no,
because it just seems to work. I would change and put that really cool. It's the trigger return spring change that Wolf
yeah,
makes.
the
I think
conversion,
that
the duty
I
conversion. It's like
that's awesome.
yeah. So instead of using a coiled spring, you have like kind of like a piston system that's on there, so it won't break.
Yeah, it'll never break
It's
basically, and that's why
it's
it's cool.
it's a little bit more because you have like this big old piece of steel that sits inside the trigger, so you have a little bit more like grittiness, just a slight more grittiness, but you have something that's like it's not going to break. And the other guys think with people in their guns that they put to the edge, like fine, like it's a competition gun, you want to have a good trigger, but it's also your dry fire gun, and like dry fire beats
Hmm.
the crap out of trigger components and everything. Like what was it, Gabe White? If you follow Gabe White, and master of dry fire, he's literally dry fired his Glock so much that he's broken the firing pin has punched through the breech face. Like the
Whoa.
breech face is punched out of the things. And so like that can happen to guns. So if you're gonna have one gun set up, like you gotta have it set up so like it can handle the amount of workload that it's doing, because a lot of those guns aren't even meant to do as much dry fire as they are doing. They're not designed for that.
Right, right.
So anyways, Robert the past couple weeks has been carrying a 52-ounce CZ Shadow 2 on his hip, a bunch of magazines, and now he's decided to carry something else around everywhere, which are cameras with gigantic lenses to get the most bestest pictures available.
I, you know what? I actually had a lighter camera and I broke it, which makes me sad. But it's a Canon M50, and so I started down the path of trying to find a new one, and it took me to I actually talked to Moisha and just got his advice. And in the end, I got this new Canon R6. It was a Mark II, and I mostly got it because it just had a really good frame rate. But I was bouncing between that and the Sony, and then in the end, I went and got the Canon. The whole point of it was I like taking pictures. I tell people it's like in life I have two hobbies, and both of them involve shooting.
Yeah.
I mean that's really how boring I am. But I've just found, and I've done it a lot where people seem to like when like seeing themselves when they're shooting matches. And I have a ton of fun just taking the camera out there and just getting pictures of people. And I suppose until people tell me to stop doing it, I'm just going to keep doing it. The nice thing is I've got Eric Sayo, who he's an honest to goodness professional sports photographer, and he's so kind to me because he's got just a grab bag of Canon lenses, and he let me borrow it. And yeah, I mean you put this it's this 2.8 70 to 200 millimeter, and the thing, it's a frickin' boat anchor.
Yeah.
And so you're walking around with like 10-15 pounds of just gear and guns and crap on you all day long, and it surprisingly starts to wear on you in a real hurry.
Well,
But
like you're getting like awesome photos. Like you're getting bullets flying through the air. You're getting brass being tossed out in like this perfect clarity, and like when everyone gets the photo, the only thing that they wish was that they were like 10 pounds thinner, you know? But like
I
it's been really cool just to see these photos popping up. And so where are you posting them so people can see most of them?
so I put them on I definitely put them on the Utah USPSA Facebook page, but I made this simple little, it's the, what is it, Slipsa underscore USPSA Instagram page, and I just dump them up there as well. And a lot of that was I've taken pictures of people shooting for just forever, and I got out of it for a little bit because I didn't have a camera that would work, and then I got one again. But I was going back through all of my camera memories and stuff like that on my phone, and I was just like, it was just so funny because you have all these pictures of people, and it's sort of melancholy in a way because like there's people that were there and are now no longer there. They've gone off and they've done other something else, or but then you have all the rest of us who just keep sticking around, and the only thing that's really changed is we've just got older and added 10 pounds COVID weight that never seemed to go away. So, but I think it's just fun. And these new cameras like this R6, it'll do, what is it, 44 frames a second. And so
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you can easily catch stuff out of the air,
Yeah.
and it's fun. And Eric's really cool. I mean, he lets me borrow a bunch of his lenses and equipment, and he's been giving me tips and advice on how to get better shots, and so it's a journey. It's something fun to do.
Yeah, no, and it's great. It's just great to see it. It's great to kind of have it on, but like Robert and his desire to get the best sports shots, um the spots where he picks are safe, but
Ish.
they're safe because he has immense amount of trust and belief in the like no one's going to there's no reason somebody's going to muzzle him in this
Well,
position.
okay, so that's sort of funny. So growing up, my brother, so I grew up in a family that would take pictures of everything. We have just, forever tons and tons of pictures. And my brother, he will go and he'll take a picture of people, and he'll keep the ones where people have the most goofy, horrible looking face, or they just look bad or something like that.
Yeah.
And it always gave me this aversion to ever keeping a bad photo. And so I always tell people, it's like, I will never ever keep a bad photo of you. But I'm gonna pick because everybody thinks they look bad, and usually people
Yeah,
actually look
yeah.
pretty darn good. But in taking pictures of people, and I'm convinced that most of the people who've ever shot these matches, shot pictures of these matches, they probably have this small folder of random shit that people were doing that probably should have been caused them to be sent home. And I have that, and and they will never be seen by anybody.
He just calls the folder blackmail. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all he calls it. He calls it USPSA blackmail. Finger in the trigger. Finger in the trigger. Look at that. That's a 180 break.
Well, that's the funny thing with 44 frames a second. You'd be like, finger in the trigger, finger still in the trigger. Wow, it never left the trigger at all. And you're like, well, we're not going to post that. There's been a couple times where, and I stay off to the side, but there was one that I still get a kick out of. I'm sitting there and I'm taking a picture, and that gun starts like creeping, and all of a sudden like that gun's now. I'm like looking down the barrel, and I'm like, and we're moving now.
And time to move. Time to move. Time to move.
Yeah,
Time to move. But the shot's so good.
yeah.
Thanks. The shot's so good. Yeah. How'd you feel like your match
For never
for the off seasons type of a
from
match? You're
from
not
from
you're
the
not shooting
perspective.
anything different. You're not shooting LA. You're still shooting the CZ.
Yeah, no, I brought the Shadow 2 out, and to be really honest with you, I was more excited about the fact that you and Jared were there to shoot the match.
Yeah,
And
that
that
was
that's
fun.
that's kind of how my year has been. I've just not been practicing. I've been working. I've had a lot of work this year, and honestly, there was something about nationals being in June that went out and we shot that, and it just took all of the drive out of the season. And
Yeah,
so
because
now I find that I'm just like I'd rather. I mean, like you and Jared signed up, and I'm like, sweet, it's gonna be a good weekend.
yeah, Colin Lewis has been constantly emailing me. Oh, we're gonna do this. So when it's the weekend that I'm available to do it, like I'll go out there and do it, and it's fun. His kid,
So
Kevin
much fun, Kevin.
Kevin Lewis, little shit. I hope you're listening to this, Kevin. I have the second to the last stage. I shoot a good stage, and he goes, "Did you see that Delta Mike?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "The first target, you Delta Mike. There was a hit there, and then you shot off to the shoulder." I was like, "Are you sure, dude?" And then I go to the score. It's like they have Delta Mike on. Like, if there is a shot that I'm not this guy who pulls the gun out and wings two at the first target. That is the antip, like it is that is the anti Tom move to do something like that. Like I'm going to pull up the gun and I'm going to shoot two aim shots at
Right.
mostly everything. And so like I delta miking something. I'm not even transitioning onto it. And I go to the score. He's like, no, you got like three Charlies. And then I go to the kid. I'm like, where is it? Where is it, Kevin? And then he points like it was like right here, and then it was off here, and I was like, we are smoking crack. Like I don't know what, like if I had a prison shiv,
Wow, man, the,
the
the the
grocery
little
budget.
11-year-old kid is throwing shade like Colin's teaching him young.
If I had a prison shiv, the Lewis family budget for groceries would be 1/5 better. That's all I'm saying.
That's funny.
So he was doing that. He's shooting his. I was holding his rival. And I don't know what to think about this for newer kids shooting steel guns, but he has a Rival S. I
Hmm.
thought it was just the plastic Rival, but it turned out to be a Rival S. And like seeing him like pick that gun up and then because I'll take like my adult daughter out and have her hold it. Like if you take someone who's not used to holding a gun and then tell them like, hey, shoot 15 rounds, like they get tired like halfway through the magazine because they're like aiming, and then like got to put the shoulders down because they're just getting gassed. And like that kid's holding that thing up, that Rival S, and like the Rival S, it's a heavy guy.
Right.
It's but seems to be
I,
working it pretty well.
the I have a picture of him, and it's just the you just catch it just at the right moment. But if you didn't know any better, you would think that gun. I mean, the way that gun recoiled just way up. I mean, it was like well over the berm in the recoil arc, and he comes back down. Right, it does
Yeah.
come back down, but in the moment of when that shutter clicks, that thing is so elevated. You think that thing's coming out of his hands.
Yeah,
It's the funniest thing.
it's a good thing we can't see that fast, you
Yeah.
know. So,
No,
anywho's, oh,
it's
go ahead.
funny. I always gonna say Josh Jobson he's looking at maybe getting a Shadow 2, and it's like, oh, I got mine here. You can take it and go shoot it and see if you like it. He sends me this message. Or I sent him a message later on. I was like, "Do you get it?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, it's a lot heavier than I thought it'd be." Yeah. Yeah, that's 54 ounces of steel gun there. That'll do it to you.
Yeah, and the what is it? The so your lock grips. Or is that the largest model of lock grips that you can get?
Those are the Patriot Defense grips that I have on
Okay.
there, and they're definitely the widest
Yes, they are.
in terms of the way they flare out at the base.
Yeah.
And that's actually I was actually telling Josh, is like, in hindsight, if I knew then what I now know, I wouldn't actually buy the brass ones because I don't need them. It's just the shape of them that finally got enough swell around the grip of the gun that I was like, oh, I can get my finger right where I want it every time.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to like push the back of my palm straight into the
The
back of the
back
gun and
strap,
kind of,
basically the back strap.
yeah, do this kind of like this C clampy kind of effect on it. And it's just doing that surprisingly has been a big bonus in the way that I can grip that gun.
Yeah. Prodigy, is that coming out?
I don't know.
The
I don't know if I'm honest about it. I bought it because I bought it because I was mad that somebody was like, talking too much, and then I was like, well, I got to go fix it. I got to get it going, and I got it to work, and I just don't care about it. It's a great gun, but like the oppositional defiance and like, you know, ADHD stimulation kind of burned itself out, and now I'm just sitting there with this gun that I don't really know what to do with.
Yeah. Now, make Robert an offer. Make Robert an offer. He'll
Dude, yeah,
probably
right.
yeah, it's like, well, if you want a $2,000 Prodigy, make him an offer. He'll send you one with all the parts already filled out with it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's something else.
he can keep the left-handed holster. Anyways, if you want to hang up a Prodigy, that's not even really a Springfield Armory inside, because you went off to a billion different places and spent $350 to get it 90% effective. Hang it off a Dominate Defense belt. That belt's at least 100% effective. Get the Mach 1 speed belt, or head on over to American Operator Gear and get their new concealment belt. Use promo code PARA10, save 10% off your order on the best competition and concealment belt in the industry. Check them out. Dominate Defense and American Operator Gear. Also, head on over, check out Rune Tactical. Get a +1 for more fun inside your magazine. It is a tool that needs to be used. I think we had a couple stages yesterday that were kind of that 23, 24 round kind of stage. And like
Mm-hmm.
one of the stages that I went to slide lock on it at 23 rounds, 22 in the mag and one on the in the chamber on the VP9.
That
And
was me
like
too.
yeah, and it's you have to have the one mag. Spend the 15, 16, $17, get the one mag that'll allow you to have that extra round in the gun. Check them out, Room Tactical. Use promo code PARA10, save 10% off your order, and check out W74 guide rods to get all the weight. I got my tungsten guide rod showing up tomorrow, so I will be stoked about that for this Beretta. And when I get my holster, so a little bit of winter prod, but you can check them out. Get all the tungsten that you need put into your gun, batteries for your flashlights, and now the new Streamlight. It's even easier to put tungsten batteries in, and tungsten guide rods, springs, all that stuff that you need. Check them out. Plenty of makes, plenty of models. W74 W74 guide rods, and use promo code PARA10 and save 10% off. Telegram. It's a messaging app. It is the best messaging app. I would put everybody on it I possibly could. But you can search us for Paracast, and then you can join the chat. You got to look for the chat. You got to find the chat, join the chat, ask us questions, we'll answer them, and get in there for some just general mayhem.
For my good friend Sebastian Munoz, what are your guys' thoughts on the P365X macro?
I do not. Somebody put out a video recently on the P320 issues and what they believe the P320's issues is, and like the dark kind of history of SIG ever since the Ron Cohen things, where he got like arrested, and that they were selling some 6 hours for like, oh, these are special like police 6 hours, so that's why we got to charge you $1,000 for each P320, and there was no difference in the P320s. And the new, well, I guess the one theory is that they're making a bunch of their parts out of MIM, right? So metal injected molding. And what's happening is there's so many stacking variances on all those parts because the quality control is so poor, is that's why like side motions can knock them
Hmm.
into firing. So it's not like it's one part of the design, like it's an entire manufacturing process of how the gun is set up plus the design. As far as the P365 macro, um, that's the 17 round super thin gun. I don't like for what? Like I don't get to this point where like well, now I want a super thin gun that's lighter that holds 17, but that is the size of a Glock 17.
Right.
Like
We're
it's
slowly getting back to a full size gun, essentially.
well, yeah, we've got like here's another thing is like Sig has managed to make two full size guns. One of them has a slightly better reputation than the other. And so it's like now you get this P365X macro and can do that. And like for guys who want like comps and everything on the guns too, um, many other companies are doing that. Like Smith and Wesson makes an M&P with a comp at the end of it. You know, there's we're going from guns that are this thick to this thick, this thick to this thick, and
Well,
that
and the funny thing is that nobody talks about, just thinking about it, is you're not really increasing the thing that actually means a lot, which is barrel. I
yeah,
mean, you're going to get more velocity out. I mean, at a certain point, I mean, you know, everybody wants more rounds in a gun until you're, in a river drowning. But I mean, push come to shove, I'd rather take that extra half an inch to an inch and get more velocity out of that bullet than a compromised 3 inch
yeah.
uh, barrel.
Well, and the other thing is too is like there's other guns that do very similar things that have a much better reputation and are actually kind of, in a lot of people's opinions, better shooters. There's like a Glock
That'd be the
48,
Smith and Wesson Shield to me.
the Smith and Wesson Shield, the Glock 48 or 43X. Put a Shield Arms magazine in there, like they get better. But if not, you got 10 rounds of a very reliable single stack Glock pistol that's going to go off, and those Gen 5 guns are going to be hyper accurate. So, like, I think there's a lot better ways to go around there than playing around in kind of the SIG area. Now, they work. Okay, you got one that works. Like they shoot great. They feel great, especially like the comped ones. But there's other avenues to kind of approach than I think, the SIG guns with the expensive magazines and a less than stellar um,
Track record?
track record.
Yeah.
Shady company, kind of throwing them out there. So
It's, you know what? I'm not a big fan of the 365. I never have. I've always felt that it was too snappy of a gun. But I'm just happy to see that consumers have so many options on the market right now of guns that are actually really quite good guns, that we're not stuck in this world of like, you must buy a Glock or you must buy this. I mean,
yep.
a person could go to the gun counter at their local shooting range and they could pick up just about any gun
There's
and
four.
be able
There's
to
four.
be like,
There's 4 or 5 in that tiny subcompact micro nine market that are actually pretty
quite
freaking decent.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 totally. And so in in that regard, I think that's fantastic. At the end of the day, I think most people slowly get back to the idea of something of a Glock 19 size gun,
Yep.
because it really does, whether it's a Glock 19 or my favorite, the PO7. It's kind of the perfect size of handgun to kind of do everything.
Yep.
I mean, everything else is more or less a compromise.
Well,
I
and
mean,
some of these guns like the Hellcat Pro and like the Macro, like they're dimensionally I think taller and longer than something like a Glock 19. They're just thinner.
yeah,
And it's like if you want a concealed carry gun, like, you know, go get a J frame revolver to throw in your pocket or a Glock 26 or something like the Glock 26 is so freaking underrated and so forgotten about where it's like it's smaller, it's fatter for like appendix carry. These other
hmm
guns like the smallest version of a Hellcat or something you can throw in your front pocket. There's depending on the clothes you're wearing, but like Glock 26, very, very small. Can hold 12 rounds. Have a little pinky extension so you can get like a full grip on the gun. Thick enough slide that you can cut it for a full size optic. Like, and it's the same thickness as a standard Glock, so you can get like a good support hand on the gun too. It,
I yeah, and I think there's an argument to be made that one of the big things that people don't really take into account is the ability to conceal, if you're this is your goal, is to conceal a gun, but your ability to conceal a gun is directly affected by the clothes you wear, the belt that you're wearing it with. That's why I like this American Operator gear, the one that
Yeah.
we got. That's been a fantastic carry belt. The belt and like appropriate clothing has allowed me to carry gun like full size guns like much more comfortably than subcompact guns,
Yep.
just in the way that they held. And it that seems counterintuitive in a lot of ways, but I anecdotal evidence of one, right? But I that's what I found. I found that it's easier to carry if you have good supporting equipment.
Yeah. It's everything kind of goes around there. X Macro, like, I don't think it's a bad gun. I just think there's better track records out there and better options when you talk about a gun that's starting to get to be that big.
Right. From Alex Went, what is your favorite rifle from World War II? Do you have to say the Grand? Because I mean that kind of
The Grand is definitely the best. The Grand is definitely the like it. That's just the best rifle. Like that, as far as like a service rifle, that is the best kind of rifle. Um, that's out there. Like the Car 98s were really cool. Like the Car 98Ks, those are really kind of cool looking guns, and like those are pretty neat guns. Um, you have like the Carcanos and stuff like that. That are pretty decent.
the MP40
Yeah,
was a
but
great gun. The Sturmgewehr is
well,
in that.
well then they had like the FG 42.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the side magazine loading, like full powered 8 millimeter, fully automatic paratrooper rifle with like
yeah.
its little scope on it. Is like that's a pretty modern battlefield kind of rifle.
The
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 concept of
German
that.
yeah the Germans really had probably some of the most amazing tech guns out there,
Yeah.
just in terms of what they could do. Um, and they're just cool. They just could obviously, they're the bad guys, so we don't like them. But I think the guns they made were pretty darn cool.
Yep. No, a lot of those designs kept on going through, but yeah, you got to say the Grand. What is it's like that meme where it's like Germany's like a bear and then the wolf they're fighting,
Hmm.
and Germany's saying, the bear is like, "Oh, we're gonna make a bigger tank," and then the wolf's like, "We're gonna make a mini star." Right? So it's like, "Oh, mini star won." It was they didn't get to use the mini star, but like if that had went on, like Berlin, toast, toast. There would have been something completely like gone about it.
Well, that was the funny thing. I mean, I think somebody was telling me that more people died in the firebombing of like Dresden and places like that than did in the atomic blasts of Japan. And I'm not going to go to the grave defending that because I'm not entirely sure. But I remember hearing like the numbers were.
Nagasaki definitely had like a lower death count because of the way the geography of it.
Hmm.
It was kind of like caught in a basin, and so like the explosion was really caught by like a lot of the topography around
So it
it.
was like contained.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
more
okay.
contained, but like Hiroshima, which was funny, is like I think MacArthur told them not to bomb, like they were going to bomb Kyoto, and he's like, no, me and my wife have been there like a billion times, like it's
Don't
a
ruin
very
my
spiritual
vacation
area.
spot.
We've already firebombed
Oh, okay.
we're not gonna do that, like do Hiroshima, and so they did
Interesting.
Hiroshima. So yeah, it's yeah. I don't think the one thing that's funny is like as a major player as Japan was in World War II, like name three Japanese service weapons from World War II. And like you could probably name like the rifle. What was the rifle? Like the Asaka or what is it? What was it?
Arasaka, something like that.
I don't know. See, it's like if you can get down to three, dude, you know your history. You're
Yeah, it's I mean I mean all everybody talks about is the sword, I got me a sword.
yeah, I got me a sword. Name like the Japanese service pistol from that time. You're just like, I don't know. Who
Yeah.
knows?
From Seabass again, where is Steve Koski? He's doing Star Tours.
He's doing
No,
life.
not Star Tours. Star Tours, like Steve's like helping people at Disneyland.
Yeah, he's like it's like did they close Star Tours? He's like going down to the basement. He's like, here's the illicit Star Tours. It's like it's $67. No cash. No, I'm not taking no fake Venmo anymore.
No, he's actually working up at the planetarium doing the retirement life thing and volunteering his time and doing cool things.
Right across driving. Give him your blood.
That's right. Let's see, from Mr. Ron Davison, what's your winter training regimen to be ready to compete in the spring?
Tell me if there's tell me. I am thinking about getting one of those grip keepers, like if they had it in a gun that like a VP9 or something like that. I thought about that, like taking that to work and messing around with it in some of the downtime that I could kind of squeeze into doing it. But I would say like I guess the one thing that I'm working on for the winter, just the winter match and just my shooting in general is just like gotta like I'm seeing the gun pretty well, I'm seeing the sights pretty well. Like now it's just split faster and like literally do not let that dot stop is going to be kind of like the message for a little bit for me. And the only way
Yeah,
I'm going to do that is by literally shooting the gun, is trying to shoot that gun and shoot the blur as best as I can.
yeah, and for me, it's just everything that I do at this point is well, I'm not going to win on speed. I know that. I'm too far behind the power curve on that. I know who I am, right? But at the same time, everything that I do right now is all just transition. I'm like when I shoot a position, my goal is to have a very steady cadence across the entire position. So it's like bing, 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 all the way through. Whether it's steel, paper, I'm trying to keep that cadence just moving as quickly as possible, so that the time between my splits and transitions are they're all just consistent.
I've definitely been doing like a lot of like Bulgarian split squats and stuff and working on my legs
Hmm.
and like just trying to get them as strong as possible and more stability. And I've been doing it for a couple months. And then noticing yesterday, it's like, oh man, like my longevity in the match and like before like my back starts hurting or like my positional stuff and the push off has just been like way better and way more stable. Like
Nice.
entering it on like 1 foot or something like that. So Joey Sonderland making you guys do all the squats and everything. Maybe there was something partially to it.
Yeah, yeah, that bastard. Teach a class and then like have jazzercise at the end of it. What the hell, Joey? Let's see. Question from Chris Loki. I'm looking for carry options while on my motorcycle, and I'm hoping Jerry could chime in what his motorcade friends might use. I actually, Jared's out doing the match, so I sent him this and I asked him, and he said honestly, there's not lot of really great options, but the best possible option is probably a backpack gun, something along the lines of like that Flux Raider. That actually looks to be actually a pretty good option if you're inclined to pursue that as something.
Well, just the like back in the so kind of like back in the day, guys who do a lot of motorcycle work and horse work and driving work, that was the domain of shoulder holsters, like the Jackass rigs and stuff like the Miami Vice rigs
Oh,
that
right.
like Galco would make. That was the purpose of them, so that they could be high enough up and that you could be maintain control of them, and that you could get to them while you were sitting or whatever, and that they were always there and they were secure. And because you had them in a position where you sitting down, like the weight distribution was also very well like maintained, and like if you're wearing a coat or something like that for motorcycling around, like it generally hides pretty well. So
Yeah.
I,
From
I'm
Keith
I'm
Stevens. Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna buy the Die Hard one for Christmas just because I want one.
Do
So
it. Do it. Full send.
I'm gonna
Absolutely.
put a Beretta in it.
Yeah, buddy.
Once we can have an outlaw match that requires me being able to sweep everyone that's immediately to my left while drawing, that's that's what I
You
need.
you know you're living.
Yeah.
Let's see. From Keith Stevenson, Kay and Lena Michalek are using the SIG conversion PCC that is the Flux. Is that the Flux Raider you guys are talking about?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm certain that's probably just killing poor Troy. That actual named people in the world are using this dirty, dirty conversion device that he just didn't want.
Yeah.
And I'm not about that Schadenfreude life, but maybe just a little.
Well, the one thing that's kind of interesting about it is that I wonder if someone. Well, here's the deal. Like, Sig has a PCC.
Yeah.
They have the MPX.
Yes.
Does the MPX have problems? Yes. The MPX is kind of hard to get running well consistently. And I don't know if it's like here's a new product from SIG, so that way we're gonna be shooting this at like PCC nationals, like we're gonna shoot this flux for fun. Like I don't like I'm Lena Mitchell, like I could win a national title, but I really want to show off this P365 or P320 flux raider that we're having. So is that the point, or they sit there and go like this is much more reliable than the MPX?
Well, I think a lot of it is probably also the fact that SIG is a massive sponsor of theirs, and they want to get sales of that, and that device probably represents huge margins of profitability for them.
Yep,
And so they're like, we're going to pay for your entry, and we actually don't care where you place. We
just
just
shoot
want the
this.
recognition of this and go shoot it. And honestly, in some aspects, that gun is actually better than your standard PC because of its shortness and ability to get into tight positions and
Yep.
corners. And in that regard, those short guns are way awesome. Even my short barrel rifles, um, even at 10 inches, and I have some of my shorter ones. I mean, hitting some of those hard leans is so much easier with just the shorter rifle. It just is.
They are bouncy though. Like they are bouncy
Hmm.
when you shoot them. They are definitely bouncy.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. And that's just the nature of going from what? I mean, 7, 8 pound gun to a 3.
3 pound gun.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as a pistol, right? And so it's cool. I absolutely love it. I have some people, I have some friends who think that this brace is just kind of a flash in the pan. It's going to be gone in a couple of years. I don't know that I agree with them. I think it actually represents a good future for
Hmm.
options for what people could use. It's certainly easier for somebody like Andrea to use.
Well,
I mean,
it's definitely easier for like executive protection guys to use because like you
mhm,
have something like an MP5K that's just big and heavy and old and it's hard to update. And then
mhm,
you have the stuff that's like the P90 and the MP7s, which are anemic cartridges. And now you have something that you can put like something like a P320 into or a Glock or something into and use those. And eventually they're going to make fully automatic select fire versions of these things.
mhm,
And then they're going to go from the races. And the other part is too is like the flux things can even be even trimmed down even more when you take a version like the a P320, but instead of using their optic mount that's on the flux, you use the dot that's already mounted on the slide.
yeah.
And so like then that package shrinks even more. And so like yeah, these things they're going to be around forever.
I just saw on Reddit today some that they actually have an actual holster, like an inside the waistband holster for the 365 Flux.
Yep.
And I was yeah that gun, and I'm like yeah this is cool because you're taking a small gun and you're going from 2 points of contact to 3 points of contact, and that just opens up a lot of possibilities for pretty much everybody, but I mean, especially smaller statured like women who would just benefit from that third point of
Yep.
contact that you're going to get. I
Yep.
think it's cool. I love it.
Yep. They're awesome.
From Colin Lewis, I'm interested in hearing how Robert's training and mindset have shifted over the years since he is a completely different shooter today than 5 years ago. Um, well, I stopped practicing. I mean that
Well,
I don't know.
you stopped practicing and you definitely went to the school of the House of Speed and kind of went for full speed mode for a lot of that stuff. And you did get and like better positioning and you did get faster and everything in the process of doing that.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Uh, I mean, lately, honestly, I've really kind of paid a lot of attention to Steve Anderson and Joyce Howland, even for that matter, of just um, learning to see what I actually needed to see. And I've kind of gotten into the mentality, and a lot of this actually came out of nationals. It was the second to last stage that I really started understanding what it was I should be doing, and I've taken that. And as for little practices I have been doing, and that's not an excuse. It's just my life right now. But Um, I've learned that there's an acceptable sight picture, and that functionally I aim at the center of the available shooting area, whatever it is. I mean I know in the production days we were always trying to hit those A zones because those points mattered, but um, I'm I'm more than happy to take a Charlie instead of a Mike no shoot or something like that. And that's definitely changed, but it's allowed me to actually kind of pick up the speed on my transitions. And to me, right now, um, outside of the fact that I could obviously learn, I could somehow learn to run faster, I could lose weight, I could do all those sorts of things. The transitions are everything to me right now.
Yep.
I'm really trying to keep my splits and transitions identical. And so, and I'm actually seeing success on that in terms of the way that I shoot steel, like big steel, small steel, it doesn't matter. Um, I can, I can come on, I can basically, I can come into a position and I can shoot that steel and keep moving the gun, knowing that that steel went down. And I've
Yep.
become better at calling that shot. I've noticed that a lot.
Sure.
Let's see from Chris Meinhardt. At my last match, a female squad mate said about every 4 matches she or someone else on the squad gets yelled at. I told her I was surprised because confrontations are very rare in our sport. An hour later, 2 guys got into an argument about a perceived DQ. One guy started yelling and the other started doing the monkey dance. It almost came to blows. She turned to me and said, "See, this is what I'm talking about." Do you have any thoughts on how to prevent childish behaviors so we don't scare away women, new shooters, and beta males?
I have never like we've had a problem before with the shooter, but then like the club kind of like went talked to the shooter and was like, "You do anything like this, you're gone, dunzo forever."
Mm-hmm.
And we've had behavioral issues that required the "you're gone, dunzo forever." But like every 3 or 4 matches, like I kind of see that and listen to that, and I was like, okay, like where's the club leadership kind of putting like we're not accepting this behavior down?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
we're
it's a culture issue for sure.
yeah, and it's just like it's a club has to select its members and it has to deselect them. So if members are really having that hard of a time behaving about stuff that's a DQ or some minor offense that happened, like that's like why isn't the club leadership hearing about this? Why has isn't the club leadership doing something about it?
Yeah, I always try and tell people in my new shooter match, and even when we do the new shooter brief at the regular matches, it's like, guys, this is a game. At the end of the day, like nobody's gonna like take that Mary Kay pink Cadillac home with them, right?
Yep.
It's like most all of us are doing this to get out of mowing the lawn on a Saturday. And like if something goes wrong, we you can talk to the RO. If you don't like that, we'll talk to the CRO and then the range master. And then you can even plunk down $100 and get your 3 best friends to argue the call for you. That those are solutions that we have. But in the end, you just have to establish this idea that like everybody be cool with each other. And if you're seeing that getting out of hand, the club leadership needs to step in and actually start having that conversation in the shooters meetings and creating that expectation of we're all cool here and we're going to solve problems.
Yep.
We're certainly not going to go fisticuffs with each other because if that's the case, um, and if you talk to somebody and like, hey, you got out of hand here, you need to calm that down, and they'll be like, hey, glad you brought it to our attention, and they, go and sin no more. Fantastic, we
Yep.
solved a problem. But if people continue with that, I think you kind of got to get to the point of saying, if you keep this up, we're just going to uninvite you. You're not going to be here anymore.
Yep. Well, and the other part too is like where's the other shooters kind of in that squad that are just like can we participate in the sport with like the least amount of dignity possible? Can we
Yeah.
not throw a fit because like you clearly threw one over or like hey, maybe you did shoot a perfect double, but you got to take the mic on that
Mm-hmm.
cuz that's what happens. Like it's dignity in our time is the one thing that we all seem to be losing at like Mach 6. It's just everyone's telling you about all their issues and all their problems and um you know that they need to do something else to like, oh, I should have got this point, I should have got that point. I need to argue about this. I need to go get the range master. I need to go throw a fit. I need to not put stuff away. I need to like, come on, people, like, come on. And like, there's the older shooters that should be there, that should be setting the example of like, you know, if somebody's going to go to fisticuffs over like a mic and someone else calls a mic on them, and he goes like, no, I'm man enough to take it. Hit accept.
Hmm.
You just deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing you have is some shooter who every time they get a mic, they want to have an overlay, and then they want to pull the target, and if they don't like that, they call the range master, and they're just like, at a certain point, you're just like, I don't want to be around you anymore.
Yeah.
Like I have a very limited amount of what, to be honest, for 99% of us is hobby money. This is
Yeah.
discretionary income, and I'm choosing to spend it with my friends on a Saturday. And the last thing I want is to go home and explain to my wife why I got in a fight with Joe down the block because he gave me a mic, and we all know that that was a perfect double. It's like, that's
Well,
bullshit.
yeah, it's just freaking dumb. And the other thing too, it's like, well, I don't know. I think we kind of said what needs to be said on it. But yeah, you're the leadership needs to be aware of these issues, and they need to start handing out the ban hammer. Like, it takes one or two guys getting banned for poor behavior, and then it's done. And then like all the new
Right.
kids get to go up there and they get to see like, oh, I can actually be thrown out of this place. I don't get to bully people into getting the calls I want.
Hmm.
So
You could always just do what my little brother used to do. Brian, he's always been like the peacemaker in our family, and he uses humor to do it. And so every single time, like my brothers or I would get into like an argument, we're starting to go fisticuffs, he'd just come in and he'd start laughing at us.
yep,
It is really hard to be pissed off at somebody when you've got somebody just mocking you, and laughing at you.
yep,
I don't
yep.
know. It's just the weirdest thing.
And it's like it's kind of on the higher end shooters, your masters, your A class, your masters, your GMs who have done it to look at those other shooters and go like, no, no, you're not dumb, dumb. This is stupid.
Hmm.
No, take it like a man. Like, that's what it's gonna take. And it
Right.
also means that those shooters have to treat themselves in the same way. So,
That's our last question.
all right, well, awesome. Well, me and Robert obviously care about you guys the most. So when you see Kevin and Jared and anyone else that's been on the show, just remind them of that constantly that
Never ending.
that we would be the ones who would get the kids in the divorce. And so we just want to let them know that. For Robert Wyatt, I'm Tom Nelson, bidding you peace, love, and soul as we depart into the open waters of the sea of life on a little tugboat. We like to call it the PARAcast. If anyone would like to send me a different color Calvin Klein tie, don't send me no regular trash. Some Calvin Klein tie, go ahead and hit us up, and I'll
The,
start. I'll start wearing different solid color ties, and I'll give the shout out. I'll give the shout out.
the funny thing is, like the Calvin Klein ties, to me, those are the lower tier.
How dare you, sir? How dare
I
you?
know, but
Go-
I've got
As
some
as
really good ties.
Robert pulls out his Trump tie. It's the great. Is the
it's
best.
it's the greatest.
It's the
God,
best.
you need
I've
Frank
seen
Shoe. You need Frank Shoe because he
Frank
does
Shu
the
Frank
best
Shu
Trump.
who shoots for Alien.
He shoots for
Is
whoever gives him a free gun at this point.
the logo guys. He actually does a really solid President Trump
It,
imitation. It's
it's
not Shane
solid.
Gillis level, but it's pretty good. I don't know. Say it wasn't any good. Anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining. Thanks for subscribing, doing all that jazz. We'll see you guys next time. Remember, you can check out a video episode of the Paracast on YouTube, and you can follow us on there on Telegram, and we have a Patreon. Get an extra like a little bit of the show for $1 a month. So thank
Yeah,
you.
it's just a little bit of show. It's not an entire show, but I mean, I mean, I've listened to it, and that extra show from Andy, it's kind of trash anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it. The
Yeah,
dollar's a much better investment.
yeah. It's literally podcast foreplay. It's just the tip. All
Yeah.
right, guys.
Good night.